How do stories work? Using mind mapping, you can actually see a story visually. There's a plot point map that we've all seen. It's pretty boring and basic. It looks something like this. In reality, though, stories seldom go in a straight linear line, up and down just like that. They're much more messy, and there's a lot of literary elements and devices in stories. Structures of stories and narratives take many forms. There is an author, one of my favorites, Kurt Vonnegut, and he even wrote a lecture about plot structures and how they support different themes. You can look it up on YouTube, on a TED Talk. And this is one of his charts, and you can see stories can be kind of messy and they come in different shapes. Here are 8 different story structures that he talked about, using some simple stories that we all know, and then he gave other literary examples. You need to know that all of this also goes in with the Common Core. There are standards that directly support the learning of understanding themes and patterns and character types. There's a type of a story called the Journey of the Hero, and it's one of my favorite story patterns. In fact, almost any movie that you see and almost any story that you read follows the Journey of the Hero pattern. The thing is, there's all these literary elements, such as plot, character, conflict, resolution, climax, setting. They all work together to create the entire story. It's very difficult to piece out one. For example, the setting, where the characters are, where they exist, what time in history, what's the weather like. All of those things completely affect how the story goes, how the plot goes, how the conflict goes. Characters interact with one another, that creates conflict. They can have conflict within themselves. They interact with their settings and situations. It really just depends. No matter what story you have, if you take out one of those elements or you change it, it can drastically change the story, change the plot. Characters themselves may change. They are dynamic, or they remain the same, static. They don't really learn anything. You have to decide. And those things connect all together. The conflicts may be internal and external. Conflicts may change. The characters' responses may change. The climax of the story is when those conflicts come to a point where they must be addressed, and the resolution is how they're addressed. Now here's an interesting little mind map, but this actually goes more with themes. Someone took Red Riding Hood and just wrote down all the words they could think about. So it is a form of a mind map, and it's a theme investigation. What sorts of words lead somebody to think about the themes? So let's kind of practice some thinking out loud here. Let's take the story of Little Red Riding Hood. She's clearly the main character. The story's even named after her. And the exposition is the explanation of what is going on. It's the setup of a situation. The setting, the characters were in the woods. There's a little girl named Red. And here comes the conflict. She's asked to do a task. If she had gone directly to Grandma's house, there would be no conflict. But she meets a wolf along the way. Now the wolf wants to eat Little Red Riding Hood, or the grandma, or both. And that's the conflict. Red and Granny do not wish to be eaten. No, thank you. So they have to fight back. When the characters have different expectations, that's where things come into conflict. Now, Red figures it all out at the end, as we know. In some versions, she does get eaten, and then the woodsman cuts her out of the wolf's body. But in other stories, she's saved just in the nick of time. So kind of what you're seeing here is a think aloud of all the different parts. The characters connect to the setting, they connect to the whole story, and you can actually put that on a map. But you can also ask a lot of questions. Why is Red so naive? Is it just she's just an innocent little girl? How come she sees the wolf and she's not scared? What does it mean to be a predator? What do they want? And think about it, the wolf is a wolf. In the story, he's not a human. So why did they use a wolf instead of a human? I've always kind of wondered that. And other people have asked that question too. And how do we think about themes in this story? I know it's a simple fairy tale and it teaches us a lesson, basically stranger danger, don't talk to strangers, don't veer off the path. But is that all there is? Are there some other thoughts there about how do families act with each other? And think about those plot points too. What if the wolf had been a duck? What if the setting had been a beach or a city? What if Red had been a teenage boy? Meaning when you're connecting your mind map, your story map, make sure that you're connecting all the parts, the characters, the settings, the rising actions, the falling actions, the climax. How do they all connect together? It's not a straight line. It's more circular. Now try it. So you have a question, you have a story, and you have a question or a topic or some idea that you want to explore. So you put that in the center. And after you're done with that, and you've read the story, maybe you've annotated, you found out, who the characters are. Maybe there's an important point where the character changes or the plot shifts, something happens, there's an interaction, there's a conflict that you think may be happening. You identify those and put those on your map. You can draw pictures, you can just do lines, you can do shapes. It doesn't have to be like this artistic, but it's good to look at examples. You can find hundreds of examples online. So read a short story and try it. Write your own short story map. Seriously. Go.